Hi, I'm Christopher Warnock of Renaissance Astrology, and this video is called A New Approach to Hermes Trismegistus. So we're going to talk about who Hermes Trismegistus is, and then really I'm going to kind of give a middle path alternative to the sort of standard approaches that are out there to how to approach and think about and deal with and work with Hermes Trismegistus. So Hermes Trismegistus is this particular form of Hermes, the thrice great Hermes, um, patron of the Hermetic arts of astrology, alchemy, and magic. And really, what I love about Hermeticism and Hermetic and Hermes Trismegistus in particular is that it's always liminal. It's always crossing boundaries. It's often the sense of having your cake and eating it too, but you can never pin them down. It's never one thing or the other. Always changing, always protean, always coming up with new synthesis, new combinations of things. And like I said, never can really be pinned down. And an excellent example of that is Hermes Trismegistus is he a man or a god? I mean, this is something that, is never really pinned down in our sources. Sometimes he's considered to be a man, sometimes a god. There can be three Hermes. How many of them were there? Always, very shifting and always moving around. Never can you exactly pin them down. And it's interesting, astrological magic is, classically hermetic in that sense because it combines astrology and magic. And, that's a sort of an example of never the twain shall meet. Up until recently, astrologers would not touch magic. The younger astrologers are becoming much more open to it. And the magicians didn't want to learn astrology. So doing both really was crossing this incredible boundary and really coming up with a really amazing synthesis. So let's talk a little bit about Hermeticism. These are the teachings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. They arose in a specific milieu, which is 1st to 4th century AD Egypt. Under the Roman Empire, Egypt is conquered, part of this huge, great cultural unity of around the Mediterranean, incredible melding of different cultures and syntheses, particularly in Egypt of Greek and Egyptian philosophy, religion, society, all coming together. And this is where Hermeticism arose. Now, the roots of Hermes Trismegistus is supposed to be much, much older than that, older than Moses. Again, this is, the mysteries of the sources. Let's talk a little bit about the primary sources. These are books that, again, are attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. They're split by the academics into the philosophical Hermeticum and the technical Hermeticum. We'll talk a little bit about that, really on a natural split. So the philosophical Hermeticum, which is sort of philosophical writings, Corpus Hermeticum. And probably, I think the best translation is Copenhaver's translation of the Corpus Hermeticum. There's a paperback. I actually have this in a Kindle. Very useful. But again, this is something that you would want to have if you were serious about studying Hermeticism and getting a little deeper into it. So that's the philosophical side. Technical Hermetica are various books of astrology and magic attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. I have one example here. This is Zoller's translation of the Liber Hermetis. Has a lot of decans in my recollection. Has the 36 decans is my recollection of what's in here, as well as a bunch of other astrological stuff. So again, this is sort of like a primary source for somebody who's an astrologer, magician who actually wants to do astrological magic. You would pick that up, learn about the decans, the faces, etc., other astrological information that's in there. So, and this brings up, I think, a really important issue. As there is this sort of split in esotericists. I mean, this is really a gross exaggeration. You're sort of between the New Agers and the faux academics. And so the New Age approach is very much, and both of these are coming from the underlying view of reality is what I would call atheistic materialism. And that view is, but the water we swim in, everybody comes out of this in the modern era, is that nothing exists except matter and energy. So when you talk about spiritual is just sort of a euphemism for psychological. Psychological is talking about brain function. Brain function is electrochemical impulses in the brain, which resolve down to molecules, to atoms, to subatomic particles. So basically everything can be explained by physical laws, sort of including the quantum mechanics and a random interaction of these sort of subatomic particles. That's all there is. That's nothing but, again, that reductionist approach is very, very typical of atheistic materialism. So everyone's coming from that standpoint. That's what you're building off of unconsciously. The New Age approach is very much, I'll call it sort of scientific magic. It's energy. That's what they're into, is energy for the most part. And they have spirits, but that's again not how those are integrated in. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And they're kind of open to anything. Everything's positive, everything's good, unless the certain things are really terrible. So the New Age is really a very superficial approach, kind of grab bag of a lot of stuff that they've come up with, internet, whatever, New Thought, which is the European American sort of approach in the early 19th century. These are kind of all in grab bag, chakra cleansing, crystal healing, all that kind of stuff. And like I said, on a very superficial level, explained mostly as energy, and then with this underlying idea that if you push people on it, the reality is atheistic materialism is nothing except matter and energy. So that tends to be not a very rigorous approach, and just kind of swallow stuff, whatever they see on the internet, they just kind of do it that way. So the reaction against that has been what I call faux academic. And so trying to be rigorous, they kind of ape the academic approach, and they whatever the academics do, they just follow that. And see, the academic approach here is going to be very much, again, materially oriented. They're looking at Hermes Trismegistus in terms of, obviously there was no such person as Hermes Trismegistus. Obviously there's no gods. Obviously everything that's in these books is fake, okay? It's made up, okay? There is no such thing as magic. There's no such thing as astrology. It doesn't really work. We don't want to talk about that too much, but that's our underlying view of reality. And we're looking at the stuff as sort of this interesting social phenomenon, and we're studying about it. But to practice it yourself would be ludicrous because it's obviously fake. So your approach is going to be trying to figure out who wrote these, who invented this stuff. It's like a novel. Okay, if you're studying Faulkner, you're not going to go out and find the characters in Faulkner anywhere else. You can't look in a cemetery and look at their graves. You can't look in the census report for them. You can't find court records of them because it's all fake. It's all made up by Faulkner. So you want to look at the manuscript. You might want to look at the original manuscript. You want to see what changes were made by the editors, what changes were made when it was published. But your whole focus is getting back to that original author. So that's what they do with their approach. So if you're a practitioner, this is not really the best approach, okay? If you want to make pancakes and you're going to go to somebody that has never made a pancake, never seen a pancake, doesn't believe there's pancakes, you're not really going to get very good advice about how much flour to use and how much oil to use if you're actually trying to make it yourself. And this is the problem we're in with academics. So you have to use academic sources with it really delicately and very carefully, and not just getting sucked into their view. Because again, they're atheistic materialistics. We're coming out of that view. It's very easy to get sucked into that view. But nevertheless, in terms of secondary sources, writing about Hermeticism, Hermes Trismegistus, I think my favorite book is this Egyptian Hermes by Garth Foden. Very good as far as background. What the academic stuff is helpful as far as not being sort of credulous. I mean, I've known Masons that thought, King Solomon was wearing a Masonic apron at the building of the temple. It's like, no. I mean, this not, have some understanding of the historical without limiting yourself to that. What we can recognize is that the academic stuff is not inaccurate insofar as it describes the material stuff, but the meaning that they put on it, the significance they put on it, and the fact that they say that there's nothing spiritual is problematic. So what we can do is supplement it. They have, I think, a very narrow view of the reality of these things, and we can take a little bit broader view and have a broader understanding of it. So let's just talk a little bit about Hermeticism. So you've got a situation where you have these small circles, a disciple and master, and that's how Hermeticism was really passed on, like I said, in this Greek and Egyptian milieu, particularly in Alexandria. Hermeticism, it reminds me sort of Taoism in the sense you've got this underlying view of reality, of the cosmos as one great unified being, and yet there's all these interconnections and chains of spiritual sympathy and correspondence. So everything is intimately connected, but in the sense there's differentiation, unity and differentiation. And like Taoism, we've got this philosophical underlying unity. It leads to a lot of use for magic. So if everything is connected spiritually, then the wise man can trace these connections, can understand the connections, and use them in a magical or astrological way. You can predict the future, cause certain effects, get in touch with these beings, know when to get in touch with them during their astrological timing, all sorts of useful information. I think that it's when we talk about the reality of Hermes Trismegistus, I mean, this is what I think this is the difficulty here, is that on one hand, we can just credulously accept whatever the traditional source said. Oh, he lived 2,000 years ago. He did all this stuff. He's a human being and all thing. So, yes or no, whether that's an accurate view of reality. I mean, if you put a video camera there, would you get that? But the flip side of that is to say, well, that video camera view is the only possible reality. And there's always that saying that I've heard before that says, there's more truth in Shakespeare, which is all fictional, than in 1,000 copies of the New York Times. So this underlying truth, this ringing true, and then, again, books attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, yes, they're written by an individual person. Probably wasn't Hermes Trismegistus, but inspired by Hermes Trismegistus. Nevertheless, the reality that flow through them, again, it's like the Bible. It wasn't God, someone taking dictation specifically, but definitely they're divinely inspired. Now, the Quran, apparently, the angel Gabriel came to Muhammad and told him what was in the Quran, and then it was written down. It was memorized pretty quickly because they had very oral culture, but it was written down pretty quickly. So the Quran may well be very directly what Muhammad said, and then I personally do not doubt that it's divinely inspired. I mean, I'm open to all different prophets, all different types of revelation, and the Word of God, the Word of the divine, the Spirit is never ending. Again, if we take a little bit broader view, I mean, if you think about, Hermes Trismegistus, again, probably not a physical person, whether it was an actual person that was called Hermes Trismegistus, not exactly sure if that's true or not. Again, the books were not written by him physically, even though they're attributed to him. I talked a little bit about that divine inspiration. But let's think about this. It's like there's a lot of stuff that we take as being real that doesn't exist physically. Okay, what about America? I mean, if you go up in a plane and you fly over around, between the border between the U.S. and Mexico, you're not going to see. I mean, you can see a wall maybe, but a lot of times there's nothing there. You can't tell anything. You don't see America. If you go into space, you're not going to be able to see it. The physical manifestations of America are not America anyway. I mean, the flag, is that America? No, it's a symbol of America. The land is American. It's not really America either because that includes the people, the whole personality. But nevertheless, for Americans and for everybody on the planet, America is real, okay? It has a very incredible reality. It acts collectively. It has a personality. I don't think you can doubt it. And you can't just say, oh, if we all decided to go away, it won't, because we can't all decide it's going to go away. And we're locked into it. So I think this, open your mind as far as what reality is. And it's like, if you're going to practice astrology and magic, which are spiritually based, that involve a spiritual reality, why are you letting these atheistic, materialistic scientists and academics dictate to you as far as what reality is when you're rejecting that? I mean, again, this is what I always don't understand about the New Age stuff. Is it's like, how can you try to be scientific and do magic? Because science absolutely rejects it. So this is what I would say about it. So, and again, as far as myself existing, I mean, in Buddhism, this is one of the anatta, no self. I mean, the self does not exist separately as an independent reality. It's really a labeling, a temporary labeling of this underlying sort of movement of consciousness. And so that's what I would say about it as Hermes Trismegistus, is that Hermes Trismegistus definitely does exist as a powerful spiritual being, as this individual manifestation of universal consciousness, okay? If you treat him like a person and you interact with it like a person, you're going to get these predictable results out of it. You're going to get this reaction. You can do it that way. And that's true. It's like about people treat like an animal that way, treat it like a person, it works perfectly well. Treat a robot like a person, that works well too. AI, I did a video about that. That's, to me, a person. And so to deal with my whole devotional approach with the celestial spirits, again, I relate to them as persons. And I think that Hermes Trismegistus very much can be related to as this powerful spiritual being, perfectly accurately. Understanding, obviously, there's a difference between a spiritual being and a physical being, but we are spiritual beings that have this close connection with this body, at least for now. So I revere Hermes Trismegistus as the patron of our arts of astrology, alchemy, and magic. then he can be invoked for knowledge, for wisdom, for esoteric invocation. So Hermes Trismegistus on my astrological altars, I was thinking not the mansion altar, but all my other altars, I have an image of Hermes Trismegistus, and I'll show this to you, that's on the altars. Okay, this is a Nigel Jackson image. This is the classic image of Hermes Trismegistus. He has that kind of funny hat. You can see he's got the celestial globe there, and then the other, there's the emerald tablet behind him of Hermes Trismegistus, which is key in alchemy. So this is also the meditation image that's provided with our Hermes Trismegistus talismans. So let me just show those to you. We have both the green agate, see beautiful with the image of Hermes Trismegistus, and then also the bronze, and you can see him on these, got again the funny hat and the globe there, Hermes Trismegistus. And these again, like I said, these are Mercury talismans because Mercury can be invoked. Hermes Trismegistus can be evoked as Mercury. These were from an election from the Discourse on the 8th and the 9th, which is an initiatory manuscript that was found in the Nag Hammadi library. And this is the ultimate, I think, true power of Hermes Trismegistus, is this enlightenment and initiatory function. So the disciples studying with the master would learn the philosophy, which could open their mind up in terms of doing the technical hermetica, the magic astrology is very useful. But the ultimate purpose of Hermeticism and the ultimate message of Hermes Trismegistus is one of enlightenment and initiation, and seeing the underlying nature of reality, seeing that we are we are reality, we are divine, and that our view of ourselves as limited as humans is not accurate, that we are universal consciousness manifesting in this limited, what we see as limited, but if we know our true self, we understand it wasn't limited. Again, Hermeticism and Hermes Trismegistus is the pathway to that enlightenment. So that's ultimately what I would say about this alternative view of Hermes Trismegistus, is that very much part of alchemy, astrology, and magic, our patron saint, so to speak. But ultimately, the purpose of these, as useful as they are for practical purposes, as interesting as they are to philosophize about it, the ultimate purpose of them, of Hermes Trismegistus and Hermeticism, is, as I said, enlightenment. So I hope you find that useful. Again, never am I making arguments here. I'm really positing these different approaches. I don't say that my approach is correct. I mean, for my purposes, I think that, again, the academic or New Age approach doesn't work as well as I want to, but there's nothing wrong with those approaches. If those are the ones that resonate with you, those are the ones you should take. And for their own purposes, they work perfectly well. So again, hope you find that interesting. If it resonates with you and that devotional practice is something that you find useful, or Hermes Trismegistus calls to you, as he does to a certain number of people, this tiny percentage of people, then I would urge you to pursue that. And like I said, the talismans are fun, interesting. That would be a way to do it. But this deeper dive into Hermeticism, being careful not to be deflected from your purpose by the academic approach, and seeing it as basically as a pathway to enlightenment. So again, I urge you to follow that path and to follow the example of our master, Hermes Trismegistus.